Hello everyone, I Riya Pahuja from ETCIO welcome you all to this webinar engaging with customers on the channels they prefer. Customer expectations evolve with time depending upon the various local and global circumstances. To deliver an increasingly superior customer experience, enterprises need to go extra mile and figure out what, how, and when, where to communicate with their customers. This makes the selection of communication channels a critical decision in the overall customer experience strategy of your company. Enterprises cannot call the shots anymore. They need to be present, active, engaging on all customer preferred channels to offer a consistently improving experience. In this webinar, we shall discuss the omni-channel aspects that are less spoken about. For this webinar, we have two eminent speakers with us. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ganesh Narayan and Mr. Sundi Raman. A very warm welcome to your speakers.
Hi, thank you.
So just for a quick introduction for our attendees, Mr. Ganesh brings with him a rich experience in the IT and technology sector. And prior to joining Airtel, he was the CEO for Capillary Technologies. He was instrumental in starting Dell's operations in India 20 years ago. And Mr. Sundi Raman here, he's passionate and entrepreneurial product leader. He brings with him 15 plus years of unique experiences working with progressive responsibilities and building teams across different industries and multiple geographies. So before we go ahead, I would really like to inform my attendees that they can drop in their questions and their doubts in the chat box. We will be addressing all the questions in the end in our Q&A round. Without any further ado, over to you, gentlemen. Please take this over.
Thanks, Ria. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and welcome to everybody who has joined. You know, in more ways than one, this is going to be unlike any other webinar. I can promise you. To start with, we have two people on the call. I head sales for enterprise for Airtel, and Sundi, as you heard, is the product guy. But by looking at the dress we are wearing, you would not notice it. So I'm the one with a t-shirt, and he's the one which is all full place up and all that. So that is where this starts. This is going to be very, very different. This is actually in every webinar you should hear some sales pitch. We promise you there will be a sales pitch in the beginning of the call and the end of that. But between that, we want to keep it absolutely no sales. We just wanted to have a conversation between me and Sundi. The third thing I would say is going to be different for this is there are not many slides. We just have 2-3 slides, so there will be no slides. And we'll have enough time for question and answer towards the end. And finally, we promise not to use Airtel's name more than 10 times. Maybe we just get a counter for ourselves. So if we do this more than 10 times, if we drop Airtel's name, you guys could send us a note saying, look, stop dropping it. So we really wanted to have a good conversation about this technology. Just to start this one, you probably heard that we launched this product for Airtel IQ, which is a cloud communication platform. We are already getting significant amount of reception to the platform. We have about close to 50 logos already signing up on that product. And normally, when you hear a salesperson and the product on the call, the salespeople blame two people for any of their misses. If I'm missing my quarterly number, the first person I would blame is the IT person, the CIO, saying that system didn't work or we had problems downloading an order. And the second person we would normally blame is the product person. The product doesn't work. There are so many problems. There's no market fit. Customer is not receiving. But I got to tell you that this is a product where we are very happy. You can see both of us smiling, so which means we are in reasonably good talking terms. And the product is working well. So that's one thing which I would say. So with that introduction, I would start, and I'm going to be asking a lot of questions because Sundi is a smarter guy. He has all the answers, so it's going to be Q&A where I'm actually going to be doing most of the questioning. So Sundi, let's just start. I know that a lot of people in the chat, or when I looked at the registration, they are IT, CIOs, they're smarter people, but I'm not that smart. So let me start by asking you, explain what is this omni-channel communication all about? What is this? Can you help us define the cloud communication?
Yeah, Ganesh, thank you very much, and thanks ET for organizing this. So a quick intro. As you were talked about, I head the product at Airtel Business. So coming back to your question, Ganesh, after in the new normal, some of these digital channels we talk about, voice, SMS, IVR, video, email, have become increasingly more important. for customers engaging with their businesses or enterprises, vice versa. When you talk about cloud communication, what is it? It is all about embedding these channels, voice, SMS, IVR, and social, email, video, into the business applications to provide a much more seamless experience to the end customer. These business applications can be CRM, can be a website, can be a mobile application. Now, what it does, it enables the business to actually improve their operational efficiency and also provide much more personalized experience to the end customer. So for example, if when a visitor is visiting the website, you probably know quite a bit about that user based on the profile. Now you want to communicate real time with that person through voice or SMS. You can actually personalize the message right then and there. So the marketer or the operational person inside the enterprise can just focus on creating unique experiences and leave the omnichannel platform to deliver that message at the right moment at the right time through a set of simple APIs, application programming interfaces. So these are the interfaces that many of these companies understand really, really well. And now with a cloud platform, they can just use them to drive the experience they want.
Yeah. So Sundi, you just started by saying it's a new normal. I know things are changing because of Corona. How is it relevant, more relevant today than it was before, post the pandemic?
See, pre-pandemic, customers also had a lot of physical touch points, right? People have stores, people have a lot of different ways to for the enterprises to communicate. Now, those areas or options are actually not there, and people are looking for more contactless way of engaging, both on the business side as well as the consumer side. These communication do the enterprises to still engage, but don't have anything about this fear of getting in touch, social distancing, and all that. That is all preserved while still able to communicate, engage, and drive interactions. You are basically driving a contactless approach, but with a lot of human touch, because you are still able to personalize your communication through a digital channel, because you are able to tell them that I know who you are, what you're looking for, and using those channels to drive experiences. So in this post-COVID world, more and more of this omni-channel communication is becoming important, because you can actually mix voice and SMS. You can actually understand what happened in the SMS channel, use that intelligence and drive in the voice channel. You can create workflows that actually can intermix voice and SMS to drive that experience as if you are meeting them in physical presence. So that's really the power of omni-channel communication.
Yeah, we'll talk about use cases after we talk a bit about technology, and we should bring this to life using those examples we are seeing in the market. But when you look at this cloud communication, in the post normal, people are doing digital. They have to reach out to customers who are not necessarily walking into their stores. They need to make sure that the deliveries or any service they're delivering, it's communicated very strongly. But why do you think this communication or cloud communication is the future of customer engagement? What is it so special about this cloud communication? This is where the future direction is. What makes you believe that's the case?
See, customer experience is the new competitive battlefield. All enterprises, small or large, are really trying to differentiate themselves in providing innovative experiences. Now, previously, without having an omni-channel strategy, all of these channels are actually in a siloed manner being represented to the end customer. So there's a voice strategy. They will be driving to say, how do you engage in a contact center? There's a separate SMS strategy they were trying to do. Then there's an IVR strategy for how to handle calls, and so on and so forth. And of course, video is an upcoming stream. That channel was not even present at that much in terms of customer engagement. With an omni-channel cloud, these channels can be seamlessly integrated. That's the key point here. You have to figure out how do you use the data points. So many of these companies are really, really good in actually connecting the dots in the digital front, the websites, the mobile apps. Now that intelligence that they have developed, how do you use those intelligence when they want to communicate real time with the customers? Because these channels of voice and SMS are really more personalizable because you're actually talking to a human being there. But then how do you bring the intelligence that you got from the digital touch points. And then when you actually, the customer is calling or you are calling the customer, your consumer or your customer, how do you use those intelligence in a real-time manner? Now this is where, the power of cloud comes in. You have to actually collect lots of data. You have to store the data in one place. You have to put a lot of AI ML technologies to actually harness about that consumer, what they are looking for, how are they, where were they before they were landing here, and then now they're making a phone call. When they make a phone call, how do you use those touch points in the digital layer along with the touch points that they have with your own CRM database? How do you combine all that and curate an experience that is very unique for that individual? So it is not one-to-many marketing anymore, it's one-to-one. How do you get to one-to-one while you're taking the digital interfaces the customer is engaging with you, his past interactions with you, and then now how do you embed that into a real-time channel like voice, SMS, so that the customer doesn't really know the difference in channel, he's just communicating with you. So
Okay.
that's the key here.
One thing you mentioned immediately caught my attention. You said you have to, capture lots and lots of data. You have to store the data in the cloud. You have to analyze the data. Anytime we talk about collecting data about the customer, storing it in the cloud, analyzing it, immediately, and the risk is around privacy. How do we make sure that this data is not used for some random advertisement? We're all tired of getting all those promotional SMSs and calls. How do we make sure that any platform we have, whether it is our platform or any other platform, can you just talk about the privacy and security of customer data and why is it so critical, and how do we address that?
Absolutely. See, long-term trust with the customer relationship starts with the trust, and privacy and safeguarding their data is pivotal here. Like without that relationship the enterprise is trying to build with the customer will not last long. So when we think about, or anybody is thinking about omni-channel strategy, security and privacy of data should be at the topmost. It should be the number one bullet item for them to consider. And then you have to look at it in many different ways. One is, how are you collecting the data? And so what network it is being used to send, and is it being encrypted? So just the starting point of data collection is a very important part. That you have to actually understand what encryption technologies you are using to collect the data, which is actually now flowing into internet or through private dedicated networks. I have seen enterprises using both ways to protect the data. Then when you actually store the data, what kind of encryption algorithms you're using? And here it's highly recommended that there's a public private key where it's a two-way encryption, and the ability for the data to be encrypted entirely lies with the organization, not with anybody else, not even the provider of the omni-channel analytics player. So in this case, if a company is providing an omni-channel communication, the ability to decrypt should not be with them at all. It should be only with the enterprise or the business that is trying to drive that experience, should be able to actually access the data. This is very important because that again safeguards, and this notion that you called about that you can sell the data to somebody else will not even take place because you can't actually decrypt the data, the provider itself. The third part is how does this data accessed? Again, you have to understand what kind of APIs you are giving and how secure they are, and what kind of authentication and authorization algorithms you are running to ensure that whoever is accessing data is the right owner of the data and all the malicious intent is taken out. So there are three layers of security that you have to think about and deliver to ensure that the data is purely used for driving personalized experiences, but are not for some malicious intent, as you referred to.
Okay. And as we think about this platform and the criteria of selecting a cloud communication platform like this, what should be the characteristics we should look for? So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, the important things people should look for when they select a cloud communication platform.
Absolutely. The way I think we should think about is in three buckets. One is robust or reliable communication. So every time the customer is trying to reach you or you're trying to reach, that communication should just work, without any hindrances. So in the case of voice call, the voice should just happen. There should not be any echo. There should be any I can't hear you kind of things happening, because that actually disturbs the experience the customer you're trying to give to the customer. So reliability is like paramount there. That it should just work, whether it is SMS you're trying to send, whether the email you're trying to send. it has to work. And there you have to actually really understand the technology and architecture of how these messages are going to flow and what are the bottlenecks, how many networks or hops the messages or the calls are traversing. Because the more hops you have, it's more likely that the call may have issues. And in the case of voice, the same goes with SMS. So if everything is contained in a particular environment and you're able to do this, the robustness increases. This is like number of systems less is more robustness. So that is one very important aspect of considering which omni-channel provider you're going to work with. The second part we just talked briefly about is security. Very important. They should evaluate what kind of encryption they are doing at all the three layers and how they're going to protect the data. In some cases, we would highly advise for them to understand how they protect data breaches, what kind of monitoring, proactive monitoring the provider has to ensure that they are constantly looking out for attacks that are happening and preventing them. So it is not just encryption, it is also a layer of human plus machine-led proactive monitoring of the data to ensure that it is safe and it's compliant. The third part is about intuitiveness. So as I briefly talked, the experience is driven by embedding these channels of SMS, email, video into the applications the customer has on which the consumer is engaging. This requires a lot of flexibility and intuitiveness in the application programming interfaces the omni-channel provider is providing. It should be super flexible, because at the end of the day, the experience maybe is very unique for every enterprise that they're giving to the end user. So it is kind of, you can think about one-to-one. For one-to-one, you really need to be very flexible and not be very generic, but make it more specific. For that, how the interfaces the provider is providing, how simple it is, and how easy it is to use. Is it plug and play? Is another important consideration in the selection of this omni-channel analytics provider or a communication provider.
Right. And I mentioned that there will be a couple of mentions of Airtel name in here. I would want Sundi to talk about why do we think a telco like Airtel is the best suited to provide these three things?
Yeah, great question, Ganesh. Here, not just because you and me are working in Airtel, but this is something for all of us to consider deeply. It is as I talk about robustness. So in the case of a telco providing the service, all the calls and SMS are actually within the telco's premise. So it is actually not leaving the telco grid that we call at all, and then is staying there, which means that all that telco grade, robustness or reliability that powers millions and millions of consumer interactions is being used to provide this reliable experience or robust. That's very important, because if the calls or SMS are spanning the telco network, there's a greater chance that there are some other issues can sprung up between that provider who's providing and the telco grid. So that's very important that a telco has this power. They're already connected pan-India. All the calls and SMSs are within the network, which means that greater reliability can be offered and greater control can be given, and a tighter SLAs. Like even if there's an issue, it's much faster to detect and fix it, versus having multiple networks involved, which is outside the telco grid. It's very hard to understand and troubleshoot. So definitely, working with a telco player here is an advantage from a reliability standpoint. Again, with the security standpoint, all the telecom operators are one of those more are running massive networks today, right? 400 million, 500 million consumers, and they are responsible for protecting the data. And they have put a lot of investments over the last 20 years to ensure that data breaches are not happening. They have human plus machine interaction. So the security is inherently built in, right? It is not bolted on. It's actually built into the nature of how telcos do their business with the end consumers or businesses. So again, there's an added advantage here. Years of experience combined with the notion that we are always privacy compliant operators has an advantage over here. And finally, the intuitiveness nature here is because the operators own the network on which some of these messages are delivered, putting a digital layer on top of that and giving it out to enterprises, you have much greater control and flexibility in doing that, because you actually own the network. So for your ability on how to actually send an SMS and or a voice call is far greater with a telecom operator than anybody else, because for anybody else trying to give this, who's not a telecom operator, they have to actually work with the telecom operator trying to do all those changes. So it might be very difficult sometimes. So here it is a much easier task in providing very intuitive interfaces. So that's why we believe that telecom operators do have advantage over here.
Great. Thanks, Andy. So, I learned a lot about the cloud communication platform and how it is the future of how we engage with our customers, given that more and more physical interactions are going to be limited. We learned that the scalability is very important, the privacy, the robustness is very important. And when we choose a cloud communication platform, we want to make sure that it can scale with the business growth and it's easy to deploy. So we also talked about how it should integrate with your existing CRM systems and make sure that it is integrated with our application so that it's kind of an API-led solution. So that's pretty much the technology talk of the webinar. Now let's shift our gears into the use cases, right? And this time I will do most of the talking, Cindy, and we will have a good conversation. So what we are seeing is that this cloud communication platform has been the need for the hour in the market, especially in the Indian market. And as more and more customers look at how effectively they can automate their business processes, reach out to their end customers, we find that the use of this cloud communication platform is in all three areas, not just on cost or the fancy word of digital transformation. It really helps us to make sure that we can help our businesses grow as well, our customers grow as well. If there is a platform which can effectively let our customers engage with their end consumers, we believe that conversations will lead to new business opportunities, better customer experience, and create new use cases which are truly innovative, which can actually change the way they do business. And we wanted to bring a couple of those examples, and these are real life examples. And these are ones which we are currently running on this cloud communication platform. And we will first give you the example, and then I'll have Sundi explain how we have enabled this. And there's quite a bit of on all three areas, so that we can bring this to life, right? There's a lot on technology, but how do we bring this to life for people inside your organization? So let me first go to the growth side of the story, and I'll tell you the story of a retail chain. And this retail chain is a very, very popular retail chain in India. It's actually the largest retail chain. And like any other retail, this particular organization went through the Corona crisis as well. Their doors were closed. And even when they were allowed to open, not many people walked into their stores because they really thought, it's not safe. And you have the store is connected, the salespeople are coming inside the store, but the customers are not coming inside the store. Now, what is interesting about this retail chain is that, they are a very well-known brand. Customers not only know the brand, but they also know and trust the retail store, the neighborhood store. They go and shop for things. And these are normally luxury items. So what they did was they did a very unique reach out to their existing customers, nearby customers, using almost like an outbound calling from the store. And then once the outbound calling happened, they let the customers know that the shops are open. There is a way for them to shop remotely. They actually enable the salespeople with a device so that they can show the products when they are, from the mobile phone itself, and they can place the order. And the customers can just drive through and pick up the order and go. And since these are luxury items, they wanted to make sure that the customers pick it up themselves. Now, in this context, there's a lot of inbound conversations the store gets, the customer calls, right? Now, one thing which was not sure is how are these conversations happening? And if a customer calls a particular retail store and there is only one telephone line and there is one extension and the salesperson is occupied, these conversations are lost. These are customers calling in to shop and they were getting lost. So that the brand or the store didn't know how many people are trying to shop remotely, what was the effectiveness of those conversation. In my sales parlance, it's how many leads did the store get, how much conversion happened, how much the value of the sale. All of that, imagine it's like an inside out. It's taking the store and taking it to the customers using this communication platform. And they approached us, and we have enabled them on this platform now. And I will let Sundi explain how this works. How do we take a call from the customer, make sure the call is reaching to the store, it's never lost, and we are able to add a bit of voice analytics, we are able to add a bit of auditing and quality assurance to the whole experience. Sundi, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ganesh. Yeah, so this was actually a very interesting use cases that we worked with this retail chain to solve for. They again, we going back to the experience. So they wanted to personalize the experience. So they actually wanted to connect the caller to the local store because that so many times the caller knew about the store, maybe some people inside the store. They also wanted to ensure that if the store is busy, how do you still service the customer? Because they wanted to ensure that no leads are getting lost. So for this, we enable them by giving a IntelliPhone, which is a Airtel IQ IntelliPhone we give, and then we crafted a smart IVR behind it, which actually leverage the location of the user because we understand the location being a telecom operator. We are able to route the call to the nearest store. And then what happens there is that if there's an agent who the store agent is free, they talk. What we do there is we do real-time transcription. That means all the voice calling that is happening, we are able to stream and actually transcribe them in what we call English or the local language. In this, it might be a Bengali store, so it's a Bengali transcription, and store them in a structured manner. So this basically allows a lot of use cases that the retail store is able to do now, which is the ability to coach the agent on in terms of how to drive sales faster. It also allows them to understand what kind of demand that is happening and how do you actually set up the inventory in the store. Some of the use cases they are driving. Then the second part of this is that if the store is occupied, how do you intelligently route to another store or a central call center that they have? So again, here we are able to use, because it's a cloud-based calling, we are able to route through our smart router the whole call anywhere pan India, wherever the availability of agents are. So what we are doing today is they are able to set up these rules for us to route the call. Eventually, the way it will work is that our systems will be able to determine how the busy nature of that store is, the agent performance is, and instead of doing rules, we will just use some machine learning to actually route the call based on the right agent anywhere to actually help drive the sales. So these are certain things that we are doing using the IVR functionality of we have, the IntelliPhone functionality that we have, and the deep data analytics that is running in the cloud to enable this routing.
Yeah, and imagine in the Corona times, we all have been used to calling our neighborhood grocery store, neighborhood pharmacy store, neighborhood kirana store to get stuff delivered. And most of the times, these calls are routed to the store. And I know from my experience, this number is busy. We have to try again, and either we try the particular store. If it's not available, we'll call the next nearby store. Now that's a sales lost, right? So from my viewpoint, that's a huge revenue loss if you're not able to attend to each and every customer. And if you're running a retail chain, and if you want to know whether the retail chains are effective in reaching out to these customers, you actually have a way to make sure that every one of these conversations are captured. Every one of the phone call is captured. Every one of these conversations are captured. Some of it could be automated using our voice analytics. And there are some bots available which can take care of more immediate queries, so that no conversation, any inbound conversation or any inbound request the customer has into any of these retail outlets you have, that will be lost. It will never be lost. And so the sales productivity goes up, the retail same store growth goes up, the revenue goes up, and customer experience goes up. And this is possible because these calls are not going to a 080 number or a 044 number. We basically take the customer call, as Sundi explained, we take it to the cloud and land it on the store. And if the store extension is busy, we can land it onto a mobile number of an agent as well. So it is really interesting for us to scale this business. And this is, we are seeing this similar thing in other forms of retail. And not only just, this big brand retailer. If you take, the auto dealerships, which is very interesting that a lot of our customers are auto dealers, big auto dealers, and they are seeing that their sales is coming back to almost 80-90% of the pre-COVID times. And what they're seeing is that, when you are shopping for a car, you spend a lot of time window shopping. You want to see the cars, you want to see multiple brands, and then zoom in on one. And the more you can make that experience really easy for the customers to do, it's actually better. So what we're seeing is the future digital of auto dealership, where the dealerships are well connected. The dealer salespeople are having handheld devices. Those handheld devices have collaborative applications, and those applications are showing customers cars, the features. They're talking to the customer, and this whole platform we can enable on a good cloud communication. So I'll let Sundi how the future of auto dealership, or for that matter, anywhere where there is a significant amount of pre-sales activity done by the customer, they can actually do it sitting from the home as effectively as they are walking into a dealership. So Sundi, how would a platform like this enable that future?
Absolutely, and this is something we are working very closely with some of the auto dealers here. So as you rightly pointed out, with the contactless approach becoming more prominent, but the experience needs to be still be driven in the same manner. So we talked a lot about voice and SMS. So one of the channels that we are investing heavily and working with our customers is around the leveraging the technology of video, and to drive more immersive experience while they are still being remote. And here the key point here is the again the omni-channel concept, which is a technology concept, which is around embedding that video experience inside the customer's tools. So if the salesperson has a tool which they use for inventory, they show all the different capabilities of the car, which is all digital now. The ability for you to place a video call with your prospect, right? That's where the whole engagement starts, and the ability for you to walk them through the capabilities of the car, and then actually be able to walk through the shop floor using their iPads or any tablet device they have, and then showcase the car to them. And so this is like the starting point of this whole journey of doing a car shopping digitally. And then the possibilities here are limitless, because once you have video calling embedded here in this, which actually works across any kind of network, low bandwidth, high bandwidth, which is the key here. Again, the experience, the robustness is very important, which we believe that a telecom operator has more, ability to do that than anybody else. That allows many more, experience to be created. You can actually create a very immersive 3D way of actually telling about the car by showing a physical car on the shop floor without even the consumer visiting the shop, the dealership. So these kinds of, that's one portion of how video is being leveraged right now to actually drive this, and something we are working with our customers. The second part of this is that, as you talked about, people are actually calling more of these dealers today. Again, that element of speech analytics is very critical here for the marketers to actually drive the message better. A simple example, some of these dealerships are using, they are able to analyze calls, like all the calls, 100% of the calls, on almost a daily basis, to understand what is the make and model of the car that is being asked for in the by the consumers in the local area, right? Now, what it allows them to do is that they can fine tune their messaging out to the market. Previously, they didn't have this ability to say that how do you react to somebody asking for a particular color of the car, which is actually taking off. So how do you actually change your website also to say that color of the car is showing up? Because then it's an instant hit and you can close deals faster. Again, the notion of personalizing that whole experience by using the data between what is happening between the storefront and the customer, in this case the dealership and the consumer looking for a car, and then driving that, taking the data and then using it to personalize it in any other channel. That's truly the power of omni-channel and communication cloud here, which can be done. And we are already working with customers to enable some of these scenarios.
Yeah. Sundi, I think there are so many other use cases on the growth, and I'll just mention one, and then we'll go to the next pillar, which is the digital transformation. I think the pre-COVID, a lot of organizations depended on a field force. Then these field force was basically going and knocking every customer. And I think during COVID, a lot of them figured out that that's not the model, and by force, they were forced to move into a remote touch point of sales. And a lot of these organizations have figured out that with a very strong communication platform, a combination of field force and inside sales would work. And if that cloud communication platform is location aware, it knows the location of the agent, it knows the location of the customer, and it is able to track each and every conversation and make sure that it's used for coaching and it's used for effectiveness. Fundamentally, the nature of sales changes, and its growth is possible even if the door is closed, the customer door is closed. Can be done remotely. If the customer has a mobile number, we can reach the customer on the mobile number, not necessarily that you need to be there at the location. So it just brings up so many possibilities, right? So let's shift to the second pillar, and that is where we have seen some tremendous success. One of the things we are all used to is getting everything delivered. We are getting food delivered, we are getting medicine delivered, we are getting automobiles delivered. We use Uber and Ola, and a lot of this have two things. One, there is customer on the one side, and there is service providers on the other side. Whether you are using handyman to fix your house, we are all now going to these marketplaces and getting these services. Now, there is one fundamental problem with this. These two people don't want to expose their numbers, but they still want to talk to each other. So if you're a food delivery network which wants to make sure that their food is being brought home, but the person doesn't keep their mobile number or share their mobile number, that's a very, very important concept, and still allows these two people, the delivery people on one side and the customer on the other side, to talk to each other. And not only talk to each other, but message each other, make sure they are keeping each other informed, making sure that this whole delivery process is a seamless, efficient process, is going to be the future need. Because whether you are a retail store or whether you are a purely online business, we just can't risk of not having delivery to our customers. There is going to be more and more stores which will go into omni-channel sales, and that's going to mean that there's going to be a delivery mechanism involved. And you really want to make sure that when the service person or the shipment leaves your doors, it's actually being effectively tracked and delivered to the right customer the right way. So this is actually a great use case for a cloud communication platform. I let Sundi tell you about a massive delivery infrastructure we have enabled and how this could change the way delivery systems work in the future.
Yeah, Ganesh, in the post-COVID, everything is getting delivered now. So lots of these businesses that are in the service area business of enabling either the food or some packages being delivered, they still want to ensure that the customers know where their delivery is, and also in many cases they want to ensure that the delivery happens at the time. And then for that, they need to actually communicate between the delivery executive and the consumer, and then so that happens. That's a very critical component or a part of this whole delivery service that anybody provides. So we actually have enabled quite a bit of many different delivery services across India. One of them is one of the largest, probably globally, to be considered. And because of the power of omni-channel communication through the cloud, we were able to ramp up from nothing to almost every one of their interaction over calls or calls in just matter of 4 days. That is, every one of their delivery agents trying to reach the consumer, we were able to set that whole orchestration in a privacy compliant manner. That is, neither the consumer's number is exposed, neither the delivery executive's number is exposed to each other, but the calls are still getting orchestrated, and it is orchestrated across India too. And here's where again one of the critical pieces. So this service of what we call colloquially call masking is not new. It is actually known quite well, and then there are a lot of companies that provide such kinds of services. What was interesting when we actually started scaling this service is the reliability of this calling that is happening. Because every call that the delivery executive is making to the consumer here to actually notify that he's going to arrive or he's just outside, please pick it up, uh, is actually, if the call doesn't go through, it's actually a loss of revenue, because the many times they have to actually take the package back and try to re-deliver it later time. So every missed call or a call not getting connected was actually a revenue loss or efficiency loss for the business that is doing this service. So they are actually looking for some 99.999% of call connection ratio. This is very, very stringent requirement, which again, I believe that it takes a lot of effort from a technology standpoint, from the network side, which we are able to give being a telecom operator. So that's one of the key learnings that we had. One is, of course, the ability, the power of cloud to scale immediately across anywhere in India. Second part is the reliability at which this is done, which meets the business goal that every call that is being made is getting connected and a conversation is taking place. So these are certain things that the technology was able to solve for.
Great. So the other one, which is actually going to be the future, is the distributed call center, right? So the new way of working will make sure that the agents could be at home, not only could be at home in the city where the office is, but they could be sitting in any place. And the new regulatory requirements which have come up is going to make this so easy that we can take actually call from anywhere, and with some restrictions, there's still some restrictions, we can actually land the call anywhere, so that the call center agents are distributed today. They don't have to be sitting inside the premises. The customers are distributed today, and you can actually make this up and running without having huge investments in your telecom infrastructure, based on a cloud communication platform. I know we have enabled a couple of these customers. And could you explain how this would work? How can we help a customer service function to basically take a call from any customer, distribute it to agents who are sitting at home in their own hometowns, and make sure the call is recorded, audited, taken care of, answered by the agent?
Yeah, previously, many of these customers had contact centers based on the geography, and then they were trying to handle it locally, because that's how they do it. And if the call is coming through, it may not be serviced because all the agents may be busy. So a lot of different aspects. Now with a cloud communication platform such as IQ, uh, we can, using the IntelliPhone of an IQ, you can actually take the call to the cloud, right? And you can set up certain rules of routing. And these rules of routing can be used more intelligently today, because you know where the user is. See, a user typically is on a mobile phone when he or she is making a call. And being a telecom operator, we kind of know where the user is. So we are automatically able to route the call to the right geography of the call center. That's number one thing. And the second part of this is, being a mobile first economy, almost everybody has a mobile phone. So what a cloud communication platform like IQ is able to do is that we are able to route the call to the mobile phone of the agent. So it does not matter where he or she is. At least the mobile phone is with the agent, so they can answer the call. And because it is coming through a cloud service, we are able to record any interactions. We are able to capture all the details about the session, store them in an encrypted manner for the enterprise to look at it, and then try to make any changes in the kind of routing or agent coaching we talked about. So you can actually add speech analytics to it, which people do it today, and then try to figure out how to route the call in the best manner way, in terms of distributed call centers. So we can actually do load balancing. So when the call lands in one call center, if the call center is completely busy, Airtel IQ is able to route it to another call center automatically. No, there's no need for any configuration and all. It is something intelligent enough to understand that. And then based on time of day routing. So there are a lot of these different bells and whistles of capabilities that a cloud platform can provide, which takes away the hassle, and the enterprises can just focus on creating the unique experience and leave the rest to a cloud communication platform like IQ to do it.
Great, thank you. So, and I'll quickly go through a couple of more use cases, and we have some time for Q&A at the end. So one of the other, interesting use case which we have deployed is field service, right? So we also know a lot of technicians come home for a servicing. They come home for installing, set-top boxes. That's one big customer for us. They come home for washing machine equipment, say service. They come home for other things. And what's happening is most of these technicians are franchise technicians. They're not necessarily employees of the companies. And the way to make sure that these conversations are happening and happening the right way is a big problem, because these conversations are happening based on mobile numbers of customers and technicians. And these conversations, once they leave the customer, we don't know what's happening. The customers didn't know what was happening. So what we were able to do using cloud communication platform is make sure these conversations happen using that cloud communication platform. So if you're a field technician coming for a washing machine repair, they are talking to the customer using this platform. So what time did they call? What actually talked about the customer? Any OTP which needs to be sent for making sure that the service was confirmed, service was delivered, there was no payment made. All of those OTP informations can be deployed from the platform itself. So not only the voice communication between the agent and the customer, even the OTP information which needs to be sent, we all get this OTPs, that can be enabled on this platform so that it's seamlessly integrated and it kind of falls within the workflow. And in the interest of time, Sundi, I'll move on to the other interesting use case, which is the international calling. As more and more people started working from home, calling customers who are outside of India is becoming expensive. We know we could use collaboration tools, but it's not necessarily the right way if you don't have predetermined time for the meeting. You just have to reach someone very urgently, or you have to reach them on the phone. This is becoming a problem, because if you're in office, you could actually use the office ISD lines to do the calling. Now, when you start working from home, when you start timing to reach the customer who might not be necessarily the same time zone, they're sitting outside of India, this becomes a problem. This becomes an expense for the companies, and it also becomes a problem for reaching the customers the right way. And I think this platform could also solve that problem. How is that going to solve this problem? So we can explain how the cloud communication solve the international calling as well.
Yeah, this was a very interesting use case that we came across. Now, if you look at some of the large enterprises, they have a very distributed workforce, information workforce, right? For example, you might be in the software industry. You might be having development teams that are cutting across, sitting in Australia, United States, Europe, India, and then they are trying to communicate and build products. And after COVID, almost everybody is actually moved out and are in their hometowns. Hometown in a sense, they're actually in their country too, which has happened. So now there are, of course, a lot of collaboration tools out there, but in many times, a simple voice call is the most right way to communicate. It happens. It is one of the channels that they want to do. And this required the end employee to have international packs and figure out how to do international calling packs to make a phone call and all. And the simple ask of the enterprise was, can Airtel do it? Because you are anyway connected globally, not just pan-India. And how can we actually enable this calling without the hassle for the employee to figure out country packs and international packs to buy and all that? So again, the power of cloud and plus the communication part of it is that the employee just calls an interphone number of Airtel IQ based on a very simple authentication, whether it's employee ID or the meeting ID. We are able to route the call to globally to the other location where the call needs to be connected. So in this case, the employee doesn't need to know, he's just calling a local number. And then we are able to take that call and land it globally in another location for them to converse into some bridge that is being hosted, let's say in the United States. So by this, in terms of cost, there's no cost for the employee, because most likely the enterprises already has some lease lines they have bought from the telecom operator for international calling. So they are able to leverage their existing investments there, provide this facility to their employees, and have no breakage in this communication of their workforce. So this is something was very interesting that we found as we went about Airtel IQ post-launch.
Right. Thank you. And we also have, a couple of very interesting non, profit related use cases we found along. So, for example, there are non-profit organizations which provide counseling for stressed people. They provide counseling for women who are, who are out there without any help. And we were able to connect them to the counselors. And the most important thing about this conversation is the privacy. It is making sure that when the person needs to talk to someone, they are going to be connected without any problem. And if the first counselor is not available, the second counselor is picking up the call, the third counselor is picking up the call, and making sure that throughout this conversation, it is kept private, it's kept secure, and no record of the conversation exists, so that privacy of both the parties are protected. So we were able to use that as well. So as you could imagine, a robust cloud communication platform which helps you to engage with your end consumers across multiple channels has got business cases or ROI across multiple areas. Not only the revenue growth is a big part of it, transforming the way you do service, increasing customer experience, a big part of it. But let me come to the most important part, which is, is it going to save us money? Is it the way to do this? Is it going to increase my cost? In like any other cloud, the big advantage of moving to a cloud, and I'm sure all of you being in IT, you know this, there is no big capex investment, and it is a use as you go. Now, the disadvantage of the cloud is that it also becomes prohibitively expensive as you become bigger and bigger. But in this case, we are spending, and I'm sure our customers are spending quite a bit of money on consumables, what we call as telecom consumables. Whether it is your call minutes, whether it is your ISD minutes, whether it is your SMS, or any other form of communication, today we see our customers buying this as an usage model. It leads to unpredictable spend. Sometimes it leads to data losses. It leads to people using that data for other things. What I would say is that if you are considering moving to cloud communication, the one thing which we really want to make sure is that the cost of using the cloud communication is predictable and it is flexible. So the way we have thought about this, and I would say that we have used the Airtel name now 4th time. I'll use it for the 5th time. What we have thought about this is that if you're using SMS and you're using in voice minutes, we are the manufacturer as a telco of both. We provide SMS, we provide voice minutes, and we have come up with a very flexible pricing model where you pay us a fixed monthly amount, and you can use as many SMS minutes, as many voice minutes for that particular slab with a fair usage policy, and you can mix and match. One time you could be high on SMS, the other time you can be high on minutes. It doesn't matter, because as your customers' preference for communication changes, they might want to receive some information on SMS, they might want to be talking to someone, they might want an outbound call. Some people might want an outbound call, some people will just want an SMS. But all of this could be consumed in a very predictable package. So not only the communication has moved to cloud, even the pricing models are very similar to what you would expect from a cloud provider, based on how many computing machines you use, how much storage you use. And what we are bringing is complete flexibility. You could use SMS, you could use voice, you can mix and match, you can pay us a fixed amount and on a fair usage policy. And I think that is the power of cloud communication. Not only the technology, the ease of reaching customer, the business model changes. There is no big investment. There is no big, PBXs to buy. There is no capex investment. You can scale almost the way you want to scale. You can use the channel which you want to use, and if you want to shift channel, it is just the same. It's just not as if you are going and spending some more money. I think that's the power of the pricing model we have come up with, and that's why what I would say is the true end of cloud communication for us, right? So we are very excited, as you could see, that we believe this is the future of customers to engage with their end consumers, and we are building and investing in this, and we are very thankful that you joined us to hear this story today. And hopefully we can help you started on the cloud communication journey as well. So at this time, I would open up for any questions you guys have.
Thank you so much for walking us and talking us through Airtel IQ. Moving on to the Q&A, attendees, I request you to please drop in your questions in the chat box. We will be addressing them now. So the very first question we have received, sir, is this solution provided as a service, and is this only within the application, or can it be used as a PSTN calling also?
It is definitely provided as a service. I will let Sundi know about how this will work with your existing PSTN lines. Sundi?
Yeah, so absolutely. So this is actually a service, being a cloud service. And then, yeah, if you are using your existing PSTN lines, we can also use that as a way to provide the service. So it can be an overlay on top of that, or you can actually imagine that you don't have to use the PSTN lines and get rid of this infrastructure that you have, and just use our cloud service to connect to anybody you want. So we are quite flexible there in terms of whether you're just consuming as a service or actually using this as an overlay to your existing PSTN. Either way will work. Of course, our recommendation would be that to reduce further cost, you don't need to do any infrastructure, but it's up to you. Because at the end of the day, we are able to route the calls anywhere.
Sure. The next up question, sir, we have is if you can help us with what kind of data is being used to drive any kind of personal experience here on the platform.
Yeah, so
yeah, it's a very, very interesting question. We are a telco and we know a lot about our end consumers, but we use it very, very wisely. We don't use it for without their consent. What we can do definitely is, knowing the phone number, and if you have an Airtel phone, we can actually know where you are calling from if you allow us to know that. And I'll give you an example, right? If you're an emergency and if you want to call an emergency number, you don't mind sharing your location. And we could use the location to route you to the nearest ambulance as quickly as possible, make sure that your location is communicated. Because in you're an emergency, you don't want to be typing your address and such like that, right? So there are ways we could use it, but we use it only with the consent of the end consumer, along with all the privacy, because we are an audited telecom company where we have strict restrictions of what we could use the data for. But having said that, there are ways to use data as long as the end consumer is willing to expose that data and going to be used by us. So Sundi, I will let you talk about the future of how we can personalize this.
yeah, absolutely. So as Ganesh said, we just want to reiterate again. When we are providing a service from a telecom operator standpoint, we make sure that any data we use, we get a consent from the end consumer. So we don't use it. But there are a lot of different, use cases of how we can use this data. In a privacy, once a consumer is okay with it. One is, of course, we can use the phone number of the consumer itself to authenticate and authorize a lot of transactions. Today, there is two-step OTP and all that, but because we know as an operator that this phone is on our network, we know and we can authenticate in a much different fashion. So one is just using the phone number as an identity of the end consumer beyond in a much more simpler, easier manner. Ganesh talked about the location, the ability for us to use the location to actually provide services, which is more personalized in the sense that you are routed to, let's say you are a South Indian and you want to speak in your native language. So we can actually, based on where you are and some of the other data points that we may get from the data that the customer is okay to use, we can use that to actually route automatically to the right call center store to get you more personalized experience in the language you want to use. So there are a bunch of these possibilities that a cloud platform can enable very easily. But of course, at the end of the day, we have to be respectful in terms of what the consumer wants and does. And so we use that information very strictly in that sense. So those are some use cases.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I'll give you one more, right? So the personalization, we start talking about not cloud communication, it's actually an omni-channel cloud communication. We all have used bank accounts, we get OTPs, and we know that, if you're a little older person, you really want to talk to someone giving you the OTP as opposed to finding the OTP on SMS and trying to copy it. Now, if you use this platform, you can actually personalize it for the customer, because this platform can either send the SMS first and then the voice call, or we can make the outbound voice call happen as long as the APIs are used. So the personalization we could offer is endless as long as the customer gives us the consent. and we can actually make it work for the customer on the channel they want to be communicated with and at the time they want to be communicated with. That's also possible, right? So we can actually be the end consumer, we can capture the data, you don't have to be disturbed during particular time, we can do that as well. So the possibilities are endless with the consent of the end consumer.
Sure, sir. Ganesh, sir, you spoke about privacy, and here is the next question from one of our attendees. He asked, would the customer data of businesses sit with Airtel, and how do you say would the security and privacy will be managed for the same?
Yeah, I'll take that. So I briefly talked about this. The data, see, it's a cloud service. It has to be stored somewhere. So in this case, it is actually stored inside Airtel's data centers, which is also servicing millions of other subscribers. The piece which we do uniquely here is the fact that when we encrypt the data and store it, we cannot even decrypt it because we don't even know in a very technical term, it's called a public private key combination. It is actually owned by the business that is buying the service. So they actually use their own keys to encrypt and decrypt the data. So it is their property. Even Airtel cannot even access it. And on top of that, because it is inside Airtel's data center, it actually comes under all the different, monitoring facilities, the whole security that we have to follow as part of being one of the largest telcos in the world. So that's how I will answer that question.
Yeah, no, I'll give you an example of a customer. He was talking to me. He's one of the big, the loan on jewelry loan companies, and you all know some of them. And they were saying, look, we will launch a campaign to our customers saying this particular week you get this much benefit if you come to us. And we see the same campaign launched by our competition immediately next week. One thing I will promise you from Airtel is that we take these things really, really seriously. We are a TROI regulated company. So you can be rest assured, not only the communication to your customers will be saved, and it will also be saved from any other competition of yours. We will not share customer data, nor the campaign information, calling strategies with any other customer. And that is how we have built the company. And that's a guarantee from Airtel.
Thank you for that. Seeing the clock ticking by, sir, we are taking one last question. And the question says this is a very busy segment with a lot of small to medium players already in the market. It is also highly commoditized. So, what is the different aspect that Airtel brings into the business and to the market?
Yeah. So think of it. I mean, I know there are players in this market who may or may not have all the features we are offering, which some of that Sundi referred to. But one thing you have to understand, pretty much every player in the market is buying the minutes and SMS from us, packaging it and selling it, which we really don't want to happen in the future. We want to make sure that we can work with our end customers directly. And since this platform is very fundamental to the way we engage with our end customers and the way they engage with their end consumers, we want to make sure that we bring this directly to you. So one thing you would see is that this is a platform which we want to reach to our end customers directly. So that's one difference. Second is when you deal with Airtel, the scalability of this is humongous. So for example, if you deal with a small player who you work with, and then suddenly you want to increase your capacity, they need to come to us, right? And that's the way it's going to work. But here, our scaling is very, very robust. And the third thing I talked to you about is the pricing models, right? So since we do both SMS and minutes, the kind of flexible pricing models we can provide is also pretty compelling. But more importantly, you mentioned this is a commodity service, but the future roadmap of what we are thinking about, the way we will integrate with this seamlessly with your applications, will make sure that it's differentiated. So, and I'll let you, Cindy, talk about what we're thinking about in the future as we think about the next versions of this.
Yeah, Ganesh, I want to quickly add a couple of things. One is, yes, it's fragmented. What we believe about Airtel IQ as a platform is that, the customers asked us to build this. Actually, that was actually the most surprising thing. So when we were speaking as a product developer, I'm a product manager. It was very surprising that when we were speaking to some of these large enterprises, they were asking us, why are you not doing this? So that actually is a very surprising thing, and that actually motivated us to build it. So it's actually direct customer feedback for us to build. The second part of this also is that this is a platform for anybody to use also, because at the end of the day, if you simply look at it from the communication standpoint, we are just exposing our network as a digital layer to anybody to use. So even the existing incumbents can actually use it. And we believe that this market will just open up because anybody can come and build applications on top of it. So it is the market expansion also in just the base layer. And of course, uh, what we are looking at right now is we briefly discussed about the ability to embed video services to unlock telemedicine and education and few other sectors. We are actively working on that. We are also working in respect to workforce management. So if you look at a customer touch point today, companies actually send out people who do perform services at their home, at their customer's home. So how do you drive digital workforce so that the workforce that is interacting is providing the best experience possible? So we are actually going to add workforce management as an offering as part of Airtel IQ over a period of time. And so the list keeps going on. We want to add identity services. We are going to bring location services much more seamlessly for anybody to use it in a privacy safe manner. So a lot of these other innovations, you can think about video KYC as one of the use cases we want to bring to the market to enable some of the banking sector to just use our services. So a lot of these pieces will come, which will actually take uh, this more of an omni-channel communication, but omni-channel experience that we want to provide. So it can be a human, but it can be a phygital experience, which is powered by a software that is driven from the cloud, so that it helps the human who's interacting with their customer, the employee, to make him more smarter, make him more productive, so that the business growth happens and efficiency drives. So some of the things that is in the roadmap, we believe that we're very uniquely positioned there to actually offer this to anybody, our end customers, anybody, a technology startup who wants to use it. Either way, our strategy is open telco. That's what Airtel is known for. So direct customers, any technology partner who wants to work, existing incumbents who wants to partner with us, we are open to all of them, because we believe that we are the digital backbone of India. We power connections throughout India, and we want to deliver that power to anybody to leverage and drive delightful experiences.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Well, that was my last question. We are turning out of time here. Thank you so much. Thank you. I am equally grateful for all our attendees for being with us here today. And until next time, please take care of yourselves, stay connected, and stay safe.